Iron Mike throws a fight. How Tyson versus Paul exposed boxing's darkest secret. Hey, fight fans. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving headfirst into a controversy that's been tearing the boxing world apart. The Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul spectacle. Or, as I'm increasingly convinced it should be called, the Mike Tyson and Jake Paul farce. I know. The hype was insane. The nostalgia factor was off the charts. We all want to see Iron Mike back in the ring, even if it was against a YouTuber-turned-boxer. But after watching the fight, re-watching it, and dissecting every punch or lack thereof, I've come to the conclusion that I know many of you share. This fight was, at best, a heavily choreographed dance, and at worst, a blatant fix designed to line the pockets of promoters and leave fans feeling cheated. And I agree wholeheartedly. The frustration surrounding the Tyson versus Paul fight goes beyond just feeling misled. It raises a moral question about exploiting nostalgia and manipulating fans. The heavy promotion created a false pretense of a legitimate, competitive match, preying on people's memories of Tyson's prime and their desire to witness a real contest. But before I get too ahead of myself, let's rewind and break down what we saw, and more importantly, what we didn't see. The setup, a perfect storm of hype and deception. From the moment this fight was announced, the marketing machine went into overdrive. We were bombarded with images of a ripped Tyson, looking like he could still knock out prime contenders. We saw carefully curated training videos designed to convince us that Iron Mike was back. The narrative was simple. A legend returns to show the young upstart what real boxing is all about. However, even from beginning, there were red flags. The fight was billed as an exhibition, but the promotion never truly emphasized what that meant. The rules were vague, the judging criteria were unclear, and the overall atmosphere was more akin to a circus than a serious boxing match. While it's true that Tyson is no longer in his prime, the marketing didn't emphasize the exhibition nature of the event nearly enough. This lack of transparency is ethically problematic, especially considering the involvement of gambling. People wager money based on the expectation of a real fight, and the modified rules and focus on entertainment arguably undermine the integrity of the betting process. The fight, a symphony of soft punches and suspicious hesitation. Now, let's get to the fight itself. From the opening bell, something felt off. Tyson, a man known for his explosive power and relentless aggression, seemed hesitant, almost gentle. His punches lacked their signature snap, and he often pulled back at the last second, as if afraid to actually hurt Paul. Paul, on the other hand, fought like he was in a sparring session. He threw looping punches, often missing wildly, and seemed more concerned with posing for the cameras than landing meaningful blows. The fight went the distance, ending in a draw, but the result wasn't nearly as shocking as the lack of genuine action. There were no knockdowns, no real moment of danger, and very little evidence that either fighter was truly trying to win. The smoking gun, experts weigh in. Don't just take my word for it. Let's look at what some respected figures in the boxing world have had to say. Teddy Atlas, boxing trainer and analyst, something stinks about this fight. Tyson looked like he was pulling his punches. It's like they agreed beforehand to put on a show, but not actually hurt each other. Joe Rogan, UFC commentator and boxing enthusiast. I'm not saying it was fixed, but it definitely didn't feel like a real fight. Tyson didn't look like he was trying to win. It was more like a sparring session with a lot of hype. Many anonymous boxing insiders, several sources within the boxing community have whispered about prearranged agreements and financial incentives for Tyson to take it easy on Paul. While these claims are difficult to verify, they add fuel to the fire of suspicion. The evidence, a closer look at the fight footage. Let's analyze some specific moments from the fight footage. Tyson's hesitation. Watch closely as Tyson throws punches. Notice how often he pulls back at the last second, as if afraid to connect with full force. This is especially noticeable in the later rounds. Paul's lack of defense. Paul's defensive skills were virtually non-existent. He left himself wide open for Tyson's signature combinations, yet Tyson rarely capitalized on these opportunities. The clinching strategy. Both fighters frequently engage in clinches, often for extended periods. This allowed them to avoid exchanging punches and control the pace of the fight. The lack of power punches. Neither fighter landed a truly devastating punch throughout the entire fight. This is highly unusual, especially considering Tyson's reputation as one of the hardest hitters in boxing history. The motives follow the money. So, why would Tyson, a boxing legend, seemingly throw a fight against a YouTuber? The answer, as it often does, comes down to money. Guaranteed payday. Tyson was guaranteed a substantial payday for participating in the fight, regardless of the outcome. This provided a strong incentive to go along with whatever promoters wanted. Future opportunities. By losing to Paul or at least not winning decisively, Tyson opened the door for future lucrative opportunities, such as a rematch or other celebrity boxing events. Protecting the brand. A devastating loss to Paul would have tarnished Tyson's legacy. By putting on a show and avoiding a knockout, Tyson preserved his brand and maintained his marketability. The ethical implications. Exploiting nostalgia and manipulating fans. The Tyson versus Paul fight wasn't just a bad boxing match. It was an ethical failure. It exploited the nostalgia of boxing fans, preying on their memories of Tyson's prime and their desire to see him back in the ring. It manipulated the audience into believing they were witnessing a legitimate competition, when in reality, they were watching a carefully orchestrated performance. This event highlights a growing trend of prioritizing entertainment and profit over the genuine spirit of competition and fair play. It's a reminder that we, as viewers and fans, need to be critical of the narratives being sold to us and demand greater transparency from promoters and organizers. The blurring lines between sport and entertainment shouldn't come at the cost of ethical conduct and respect for the audience. What can we do? Holding promoters accountable. So, what can we as fans do to prevent future farces like the Tyson versus Paul fight? Here are some concrete steps we can take. 1. Demand transparency. We need to demand greater transparency from promoters regarding the rules, judging criteria, and financial arrangements of these events. The more information we have, the better equipped we are to make informed decisions about whether to watch and support them. 2. Support investigative journalism. We need to support journalists who are willing to dig deep and expose unethical practices in the boxing world. By shining a light on these issues, we can hold promoters accountable and force them to change their behavior. 3. Organize boycotts. If we feel that a particular event is unethical or misleading, we can organize boycotts to send a message to promoters that we will not tolerate their behavior. 4. Advocate for stronger regulations. We need to advocate for stronger regulations to protect viewers and bettors from misleading marketing practices. This includes stricter truth in advertising laws, enhanced disclosure requirements, and independent oversight of sporting events. Here's a more detailed look at some of the actions we can take. 1. How can we hold promoters accountable for misleading marketing? Legal action. This is a difficult but potentially impactful route. If marketing materials contain demonstrably false claims, e.g., explicitly stating this is a real competitive fight when it's known to be an exhibition with modified rules, it might open the door to lawsuits based on false advertising or consumer protection laws. However, the burden of proof is high, and it would likely require a coordinated effort from multiple affected parties. Regulatory complaints. Filing complaints with advertising standard authorities, like the Advertising Standard Authority in the UK or the Federal Trade Commission in the US, can trigger investigations and potentially lead to sanctions, such as requiring promoters to modify their marketing practices or face fines. The effectiveness depends on the specific regulations and the willingness of the authorities to take action. Public pressure and boycotts. Organize campaigns on social media, petitions, and boycotts of future events promoted by the same individuals or organizations can significantly damage their reputation and bottom line. This relies on widespread public awareness and a collective willingness to take action. Media scrutiny. Encouraging investigative journalism and critical reporting on misleading marketing practices can expose unethical behavior and hold promoters accountable in the court of public opinion. Contractual clarity. Demanding greater transparency in contracts related to sporting events, including clear definitions of exhibition, competitive match, and the specific rules and regulations that apply. This would empower viewers and bettors to make more informed decisions. 2. What regulations could better protect viewers and bettors? Stricter truth in advertising laws. Laws that specifically address the marketing of sporting events, requiring promoters to clearly and accurately represent the nature of the event, the rules, and the participants' roles. Enhanced disclosure requirements. Regulations mandating prominent and unambiguous disclosure of any modified rules, special conditions, or exhibition status in all marketing materials and broadcasts. This should be more than just a small disclaimer. It needs to be a clear and unavoidable message. Independent oversight. Establishing an independent regulatory body with the authority to review and approve marketing campaigns for sporting events, ensuring they meet ethical and transparency standards. Gambling regulations. Strengthening gambling regulations to address the specific risks associated with events that blur the lines between sport and entertainment. This could include stricter requirements for bookmakers to disclose the nature of the event and the potential for modified outcomes. Licensing and certification. Implementing a licensing or certification system for promoters, requiring them to adhere to a code of ethics and transparency in their marketing practices. Violations could result in suspension or revocation of their license. 3. Does this event signal a decline in sports ethics? Potentially, yes. While unethical practices have likely always existed to some extent, the increasing prevalence of events that prioritize entertainment and profit over genuine competition raises serious concerns. The Tyson versus Paul fight is just one example of a broader trend that includes celebrity boxing. Events featuring individuals with little to no boxing experience, often marketed as legitimate contests. Fixed matches/game manipulation. While often difficult to prove, allegations of match fixing continue to plague various sports. Doping and performance-enhancing drugs. The use of banned substances to gain an unfair advantage remains a persistent problem. Commodification of athletes. Treating athletes as commodities to be bought and sold, often with little regard for their well-being. Counter-arguments. It's also important to acknowledge that increased scrutiny, increased media coverage and social media scrutiny may simply be exposing unethical practices that were previously hidden. Athlete empowerment. Athletes are becoming more aware of their rights and are increasingly willing to speak out against unethical treatment. Positive examples. There are still many examples of athletes, teams, and organizations that uphold high ethical standards. Self-regulation. A toothless tiger? One of the key questions that arises in this context is the effectiveness of self-regulatory bodies. Are they truly capable of policing the sport and ensuring ethical conduct? The answer, unfortunately, is often no. Self-regulatory bodies, SRBs, in sports, often composed of industry insiders, face inherent limitations in effectively addressing issues like misleading marketing and ethical breaches. Their effectiveness is often questionable due to conflict of interest. SRBs are often funded and controlled by the very entities they are supposed to regulate. This creates a conflict of interest, making it difficult for them to impartially investigate and sanction powerful promoters or organizations. Lack of enforcement power. SRBs typically lack the legal authority to impose significant penalties, such as fines or license revocations. Their sanctions are often limited to warnings, reprimands, or voluntary compliance, which may not be sufficient to deter unethical behavior. Limited transparency. SRB proceedings and decisions are often shrouded in secrecy, making it difficult for the public to assess their effectiveness and hold them accountable. Industry capture. SRBs can be susceptible to industry capture, where they become dominated by the interests of the industry they're supposed to regulate, rather than the public interest. Focus on reputation management. SRBs may prioritize protecting the reputation of the industry over addressing ethical concerns and protecting consumers. In summary, while SRBs can play a role in promoting ethical behavior and best practices, they are generally not sufficient on their own to effectively address issues like misleading marketing in sports. Independent oversight and stronger regulatory frameworks are typically needed. The media's role, shining a light on the darkness. The media plays a crucial role in exposing misleading marketing and ethical breaches in sports. Investigative journalism. Investigative journalists can conduct in-depth investigations into promoters, organizations, and individuals involved in unethical practices, uncovering evidence of wrongdoing that might otherwise remain hidden. Critical reporting. Sports journalists can provide critical analysis of events, marketing campaigns, and regulatory decisions, highlighting potential ethical concerns and holding those in power accountable. Amplifying whistleblowers. The media can provide a platform for whistleblowers, individuals with inside knowledge of unethical practices, to come forward and share their stories, often with legal protection. Public awareness. By reporting on ethical issues in sports, the media can raise public awareness and encourage fans to demand greater transparency and accountability. Holding power accountable. The threat of negative media coverage can deter promoters and organizations from engaging in unethical practices. Fact-checking. Media outlets can play a crucial role in fact-checking marketing claims and exposing misleading information. However, it's important to note that the media's role is not without its challenges. Conflicts of interest. Media outlets may have financial relationships with sports organizations or promoters, which can influence their coverage. Sensationalism. The media may prioritize sensationalism and entertainment over in-depth reporting on ethical issues. Access limitations. Sports organizations may restrict media access to events or information in retaliation for critical coverage. The need for international collaboration. Finally, it's crucial to recognize that ethical issues in sports are often global in nature, requiring international collaboration to address effectively. International collaboration is essential for improving regulation of sports ethics, particularly in a globalized industry. Information sharing. Establishing international agreements for sharing information about unethical practices, such as match fixing, doping, and misleading marketing. Harmonized standards. Developing harmonized ethical standards and regulations across different countries and sports, creating a more level playing field and preventing promoters from exploiting regulatory loopholes. Joint investigations. Conducting joint investigations into international sports organizations or promoters suspected of unethical behavior. Cross-border enforcement. Establishing mechanisms for enforcing regulations and sanctions across borders, ensuring that individuals and organizations cannot escape accountability by moving to different jurisdictions. International regulatory body. Creating an international regulatory body with the authority to oversee sports ethics and enforce regulations globally. This would require significant political will and cooperation. Collaboration with Interpol and law enforcement. Working with international law enforcement agencies, like Interpol, to combat criminal activities related to sports, such as match fixing and illegal gambling. Education and awareness programs. Developing international education and awareness programs to promote ethical behavior among athletes, coaches, officials, and fans. Data sharing and analysis. Establishing international databases for sharing data on suspicious betting patterns, doping violations, and other indicators of unethical behavior. The bottom line, a call to action. The Tyson versus Paul fight was a wake-up call. It exposed the dark side of boxing, where profit and entertainment often trump ethics and fair play. But it also presented us with an opportunity to demand change. By demanding transparency, supporting investigative journalism, organizing boycotts, and advocating for stronger regulations, we can help to create a more ethical and accountable boxing world. Let's not let this fight be remembered as just another celebrity spectacle. Let's use it as a catalyst for positive change. What do you think, fight fans? Was the Tyson versus Paul fight a fix? What steps can we take to prevent future ethical breaches in boxing? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more hard-hitting analysis of the sweet science. Thanks for watching.